So as discussed previously, so I will cover API testing in this session. In this session, and maybe I need one more session also for API testing. And I have listed out some pending concepts. Okay. Test fragments and Nmon analyzer, and Fiddler and developer tools. Right. So these are the pending topics that I have listed out. So first we will start with API testing, which is very important. So what does API stand for? First of all, so API stand for Application Programming Interface. Okay. API stands for Application Programming Interface. So what is an API? Okay. So what is API? What is API testing? And what do we look into in while we are doing API testing? What are the things that we need to take care of? Okay. So till now, whatever testing we have done, right? Whatever scripts we have developed and all, those are GUI testing scripts. Yes or no? So we are doing the navigation on the application front end, and we are doing testing on that. So that is GUI testing. We are doing GUI testing on the presentation layer, right? So till now using web protocol, whatever testing we have done, right? Is able to follow. So that is GUI testing on the presentation layer. And when you are doing GUI testing, so you are testing all your requests will go to the web server, which is the presentation layer. Clear, guys? Now, when you do API testing, right? So we are testing the business layer directly. We don't hit the user interface or the presentation layer. The request will go to this API testing will be done on the business layer, right? Or application user interface, right? So, and of database testing, we are not going to discuss. That is out of scope for this. So, but to understand the difference between GUI testing and API testing. So when you are doing GUI testing using web protocol that HTTP request sampler, we are hitting or we are doing testing on the presentation layer. Whereas when we are doing API testing, we are hitting the business layer. And what does API stand for? Application Programming Interface. You can see the definition here. API stands for Application Programming Interface. And what is the purpose of doing API testing? It is to check the functionality, reliability, performance, and the security of the APIs. So first of all, what are these APIs? So let's understand them, right? So to help you understand that, so I have to discuss what is a web service. I'll start with what is a web service and web APIs. And then I will try to explain differentiate between web services and web APIs. Okay. And where are we using these APIs? To understand the importance of APIs, let me explain a few examples. Where are we? Examples of we using APIs, right? So let's say, for instance, suppose if you are testing any travel application like APSRTC.in, APSRTC online ticket booking. Let's say, for example, you are testing APSRTC online booking application. Okay. So, so here, actually, I will first try to explain where, where does these APIs come into picture, or what are these APIs all about? Clear, guys? So let's say, for example, so why? Because, knowingly or unknowingly, we are using a lot of APIs in our day-to-day life, right? But we don't know, like most of us don't know that we are using APIs. Okay. So to give that one example for that, right? So I'll take this IRCTC example. Sorry, APSRTC online.in or KSRTC or TSRTC, anything. You can take any of these ticket booking websites. So for instance, when you are testing this, APSRTC, so let's say you create one script for ticket booking, one script for cancel ticket, one script for track service, etc. And you do GUI testing for this application, right? Right, guys? Or if you are testing KSRTC online, so what you do is like you generally do GUI testing mostly. Of course, you can do API testing for this application as well. First, I want to explain where does these APIs come into picture, okay? Or how are these APIs useful in our day-to-day life? Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So when you are testing this KSRTC application, so basically you will develop one script for PNR inquiry, right? Ticket availability, or booking ticket, cancel ticket, and so on, package tours. student pass, all these flows. You will cover all the business flows and you will do GUI testing for this, right? And you measure the response time of each page, and if you find out any performance issues or bottlenecks. Now, let's say, for example, so this is about APS-RTC and KSRTC application when you are using directly. And here in this case, right, so we will, when you are doing any interactions on this, these, suppose you are searching for a PNR number. So this will, you enter the PNR number and mobile number, and if you click on submit, a request will go to this KSRTC database, and it will fetch the details from the database here, right? Or else if you are searching for some buses over here from one city to another city, so your request will go to APSRTC database servers, and it will get the data from the database servers, from the respective database server. Clear, guys? So now, how about, suppose you are using that bus application, right? Now, let's say, for instance, you enter, some from city and to city and select a date and click on search buses. Now, from where does this red bus get the data from, right? All this data. See, observe here, it is getting all the TSRTC buses data, isn't it? What is the departure time and what is the availability, right? It is getting the availability and ticket rate and all these details, right? And not only for TSRTC, right? Not only, so it is getting data, it is displaying the ticket availability or seat availability in multiple private travels. Yes or no? These are multiple private travels, right? KSM Road Lines or Jing Bus or all these intercity travels, DSR, Sri Krishna travels. These are all different private travels. And so how is Redbus getting this information? Does Redbus have any access to their database, to the database of KSR, TSRTC, or does Redbus have access to the database of all these private travels?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other answer?
Because if they are using their databases, how many tickets are booked or not, they understand, right?
Okay. No, actually, Redbus will not have access to their database, TSRTC database, or this any of the private travels database, right? So they are, any travel operator will not give access to external world, to their database. Then how does Redbus get this information? Is all these private travels and all these these government travels as well, TSRTC or APSRTC, they will expose their APIs to the external world, right? And Redbus will actually send a request to the APIs, to each of the APIs with which they are associated, right? Or with which they are having partnership. And those APIs get the data from the database, and that data will be displayed by this Redbus application. Is it clear, guys?
Can you repeat it?
Okay. So if you are directly using APSRTC application or KSRTC or TSRTC application, and you are searching for some buses from, let's say you are searching for some buses from some city to, from Hyderabad to Vijayawada, right? And click on check availability, right? Okay. So you are searching for buses from one city to another city on APSRTC website. And if you click on check availability, now this data will be fetched from the database of this APSRTC website. Yes or no? Your request will go to the web server. Web server, that request, web server will contain only, serve only static content, isn't it? Yes or no? So web server can serve only static content, yes or no? See, for example, this page, this home page, right? This page will be served by web server. So, however, when you search for some buses between two cities, right? This is Telangana, right? So, okay. Let's say you are searching for buses between these two cities and click on check availability. Your request will go to app server, and app server will connect with the database, right? And all this happens when you are searching for some when you are doing some search operation. So your request will go to web server. Web server sees if that request is for a static content or a dynamic content. If it is static content, it will serve directly, or if it is dynamic content, it will send the request to the. So these details will be stored in the database, right? What is the ticket cost? How many seats are available currently, right? Out of
Yes.
those, how many of these are window seat? All this information will be stored in the tables, in the database tables. So your app server, your application server will send that request to the database server, and database server process the, so some query will be executed on the back end like this. So some query will be executed like this. Select star from buses table where source is equal to, or starting point of source is equal to, let's say that point, okay, and destination city is equal to Bangalore. Some need not be exactly. I'm just giving an example. So such type of query will be written, and that code will run in the application server. Now to execute this query, right, your application server will connect to the database, execute that query, get that data, and then that application server will send that data to app server. App server will send the data, that response to web server. Web server will display the information to the user. So this is what happens when you search for a city between for a bus between two cities, or for a train between two cities on IRCTC application. Clear this?
Yes.
Right? But however, so so this is when you are using the application directly, like KSRTC or APSRTC or TSRTC, if you are using the application directly, because this application will have access to the it will database server is part of this application, so it will have access, direct access, and it will get the data. However, when you are let's say for example, you are using some third party application like Redbus or Avibus or any other travel aggregators. Avibus, or there are a lot of other travel aggregators, yes or no? Avibus,
Yes.
what else?
Ola.
Travel aggregators in India. Travel top, yeah. These are all this Thomas Cook or Yatra, Go I Buy Go, right? So if you are using any of these travel operators, right, they will not have their own buses, or they will not have their own database servers, or they will not have their own buses, right? So but they will partner with some other travel companies, and they will provide facilitate the ticket booking. Yes or no? Does Redbus have any own buses? They will not have any own buses, or they will not have their own travels. They will associate with some other private travels or government travels like these, and they will send a request when you search for two cities, when you search for buses between any two cities. They will send the request to all the travel operators which are operating in between these two cities, which are providing transport services between these two cities, right? They will send a request to each API like TSRTC, APSRTC, and private travels, and they cut the data from the response from the APIs and display that information over here. Okay. Or else when you are using, when you are checking weather details on your mobile phone, or if you are, if you are checking Facebook or Instagram, right? So basically, like all these mobile apps and all will be working on the basis of APIs. Okay, REST APIs basically, to be specific. So when you check the weather details of a particular city, right? Your mobile app will send a request to the corresponding API. Okay. So knowingly or unknowingly, we are using a lot of APIs. Okay. Yes or no? Here we are using a lot of APIs. When you send a request to, when you search for bus between in Redbus or Avibus or any of these travels, right? Any of these travel aggregators. These are called as travel aggregators. Or else, you have Ola also. Ola, they don't have their own cabs, right? So they will have some partners and they will provide services with the help of the partners, isn't it? Yes or no, guys?
Yes, sir.
So when you are using any of these travel aggregators, right, they will not have access to the, for example, Redbus will not have access to the TSRTC database or APSRTC database. Instead of that, when you search for buses between two cities, this Redbus will send a request to all the APIs, all the public APIs of these applications, public APIs of these private travels, and get the information. Okay, and displays that information over here. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right now, let's understand. Previously, like web services was very prominent, but right now, web services had become outdated, and every application or every mobile app is using APIs. So if you want to define what is a web service or an API, so first we'll discuss what is web service, right? And then we will discuss what is an API. Okay, so to quickly help you understand what is a web service, I think this one diagram would be enough. Okay, let's say for example, there is one Java application and there is one .NET application. Okay, there is one Java application, there is one PHP application, .NET application, and Java application, right? There are a lot of different applications. And now suppose if a Java application want to communicate with the .NET application, or if a Java application want to communicate with the PHP application, right? Or if a .NET application want to communicate with the PHP application like this, right? So web service is a piece of software which facilitates that communication between different applications. Web service is a software, right, which facilitates the communication between different applications. When I say different applications developed in different languages. Okay, read this definition here. Java, .NET, and PHP applications can communicate with the other applications through a web service over the network. So a web service is a language independent way of communication. So any application can communicate with any other application. If you want to facilitate the communication between applications developed in two different languages, right? Or same application also, you require a web service. Suppose if a Java application has to communicate with another Java application, right? In between, there will be some piece of software which will facilitate that communication, and that is called as a web service. Is it understood or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right, and web services are of when you okay. So for this communication to happen, right, between different systems, right, there are certain rules actually for defining the communication between different systems, and those rules are called as WSDL, web service description language, or web service definition language. What is a WSDL? So this is read as WSDL. What is the WSDL, guys? The rules that define how communication can happen between different applications. Those rules are defined in a file called web services, or the set of rules is called as WSDL, web service description language, or web service definition language. Right? So these rules are defined in a file called WSDL file with extension .WSDL. All these rules are defined in a file called WSDL file. Okay, this is another term that you need to know. What is a WSDL file, or what is web service definition language, or what is a web service description language? So simply it contains the set of rules for communication between different systems. Different systems means applications which are developed in different languages. Clear, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, and the next one. So there are different types of web services. The web services are of two kinds. One is SOAP and the other one is REST. SOAP and REST. There are two different API, two different types of web services. One is SOAP, the other one is REST. Where SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol, REST stands for Representational State Transfer. You can note it down, note the full forms if you are taking running notes. These are important, guys. Can you explain different web services? What are the different kinds of web services? Or what is a web service, first of all? Right? Web service is a software which facilitates the communication between different applications. Different applications means applications developed in different languages. Okay. Or one application, if same application, so for example, even though there are two applications which are developed in Java only, but still, if they want to communicate with each other, there should be some intermediary software between them to communicate with, for that communication to happen. And that, that piece of software is called as a web service. Is it clear or no?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now, what is SOAP here? SOAP means SOAP has become actually outdated now. No one is using SOAP now, but everyone is using REST. We'll discuss why REST has become, SOAP has become obsolete. Obsolete means outdated. After REST came into picture, right? After REST came into picture, SOAP has become obsolete, right? SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. Okay. So why REST is so popular nowadays and why SOAP has become obsolete is SOAP uses XML based on messaging exchange. Means for this communication to happen, right? Means for this information exchange or communication exchange, SOAP uses XML based message exchange. SOAP uses XML based message exchange. Okay. Yes, you need not know the internals. We are not developers. Okay. But we need to know just basics. What is a web service? What is an API? What is SOAP? What is REST? We need to have a high level understanding for interview purpose. Okay. Interview purpose or, for working on in testing, any testing. So don't think that, like, see, even a functional test engineer or automation engineer no need to know these, or a performance engineer or a security test engineer need to know these basic concepts. Okay. Some people may be thinking that, oh, we need to know one more concept or two more concepts like web services and web APIs in performance testing. So we don't know. We thought that, some people might have thought that if they know JMeter, and that's good enough, right? Yes or no? That's more than enough.
Yes, sir.
So you need every software engineer, whether it's developer or tester, like, right? So they should know these basics. Okay. Now, if SOAP uses XML based message exchange, what does REST uses? Right? REST supports all the formats like XML, JSON, text, or HTML. REST supports all the formats starting with XML. It supports JSON, text, or HTML. So what difference does it make? Right? So basically, REST mainly uses JSON format for this communication. When some data is getting transferred from one application to another application, that happens in the form of JSON. Now, in what way JSON is advantageous is when compared to XML, JSON is a lightweight format. If you remember, we covered that. Did we cover this in the performance testing basics? I'm not sure whether I covered this already or not. Okay, XML versus JSON, or what is the difference between XML and JSON? Did I explain this, guys? You have it in performance testing fundamentals. Please go through that once. Okay. Did I explain this? XML stands for extensible markup language. Both XML and JSON are designed to store and transport data. Right? So if some information has to be transported over network, right? So XML can be used or JSON can be used. However, JSON is after JSON came into picture, right? XML has become outdated because JSON is a lightweight format for storing and transporting data. There's very important concepts, guys. So please, pay full attention. Okay. And what is meant by lightweight format? Very important interview question. What is the difference between XML and JSON? All right. So difference between XML and, first of all, both XML and JSON are designed to store and transport data. Okay. However, JSON is a lightweight format. What does that mean? What does that mean when you say lightweight format? Right? This slide helps you to understand. Suppose there is a data of 3 employees that should be transferred over from one application to another application. Right? If so, this is how your XML and JSON looks like. Content looks like. If the application uses XML, right? This is the information of 3 employees, right? First name and last name information of 3 employees. So if the application uses XML, it will have a XML starting tag. This is XML starting tag. See, this is XML star. This is the starting tag of employees. Inside employees, there is another starting tag or opening tag called employee. Inside that you have employee's first name. This is opening tag. This is closing tag. This is how XML code looks like when an application uses or when 2 applications are using XML for data transfer between each of them. Understood, guys? So this is how your data, the data length will be more when in XML, right? But if an application or if 2 applications are using JSON for transporting the same data, the data will be like this. Okay, this is how a JSON looks like. JSON, if the response or if the transport, if JSON is used for transporting data between or transferring data between 2 applications, this is how the details of 3 employees will be transferred, right? And if you observe here, the number of characters in XML will be more compared to JSON. Yes or no?
Yes.
Right? So you can, in fact, let me do one thing. Let me copy this data and use this character count online.com. You can check the number of characters, right? So this is XML example. How many characters are there? You have 286 characters, isn't it? Now, if you see the same data in JSON example, if application is using JSON, right? See how many characters it will be. Remember, XML format consists 286 characters, whereas JSON consists 146 characters. Almost half, right? Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. So that is what lightweight format means. The same data of 3 employees can be transferred with the help of 146 characters when it is using JSON. But if an application is using XML, how many number of characters it is? It's around 286, right? If I remember it correctly, isn't it? So now we understood what is meant by lightweight format. What is meant by this statement? JSON is a lightweight format for storing and transporting data.
Length
Yes,
of the
got it.
characters.
Right. And most of, nowadays, like, mobile devices has increased, right? And mobile devices will have limited bandwidth, isn't it? Mobile devices will have limited bandwidth compared to laptops and desktops. Yes or no? And that is why JSON has become more popular because many users are using mobile apps than before. That's why after once JSON came into picture, right? XML has become outdated because it is heavyweight, whereas JSON is a lightweight format. Clear, guys? Remember this example. The same data of 3 employees, if an application is using JSON, right, it will have half the characters of XML characters. Right? Now that is why this, the JSON has become more popular. As REST has become so popular, REST service and SOAP service, when we compare what is the difference between SOAP and REST is, SOAP uses XML as XML based message exchange, whereas REST supports all the formats, but JSON is the format that REST uses predominantly. And that is why JSON, this REST has become, REST APIs have outdated the SOAP, which uses XML. Clear? Yes, understood or no?
Yes.
Right? And now what is an API? So as we discussed before, So API is the acronym for application programming interface, right? It serves, so it is a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk each other. Software intermediary means it is a software program that allows two applications to talk with each other. Let's say, if you are, so here, when you search for two buses between two cities, basically this red bus application will communicate with all the private travels which it has partnership with, and it will get the data with the help of this APIs. It will, your red bus will send a request to all the APIs of TS, all the private travels and government travels, and it get the data and it will display the data for you, the ticket availability data for you. Okay. So API is a particular set of rules and specifications that software programs can follow to communicate with each other. And web services versus web APIs, or what is the difference between a web service and web API? Again, so it is a SOAP-based service and returns response as XML. Web service is a SOAP-based service and returns response as XML, whereas this web API is the HTTP-based service and returns JSON or XML data by default. But JSON is more popularly used when you are using an APIs, right? When you are using APIs, you get response mostly in the form of JSON. And it is, as it is lightweight architecture, it is good for devices which have limited bandwidth like mobile devices. That is why APIs have become so popular nowadays, and web services have become outdated and obsolete.
So,
Understood?
Pawan, one query with regards to first point. So, web service are of two types, right? SOAP as well as REST. Then, in this difference, why is it says it is a SOAP-based service?
Okay, so see, the objective of this web service and web APIs both are same. That is to communicate to, they act as a mediator between two applications.
Right.
In that context, I mentioned here like web services are two types. This is the web service and this is REST API.
Okay.
So the reason why it is mentioned is the objective of both of these web services and APIs are one and the same. They help us to communicate. They help us communicate. They help two applications to communicate with each other, both of them.
Got it. Got it. So here, kind of, you are seeing a difference between SOAP and REST, kind of thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and few more examples of APIs. Suppose there is a weather application. Okay, I'll show one weather API. Have it in in the JMeter PPT. Let's say, for example, this is one API example. Okay. So I am copying that API and hitting in browser, sending a request to that API. Okay. Now, what is this API is? It will get the weather details, current weather details in London City. Okay. And this is the response that we got from that API. This is the response that we got from that API. Okay. And yeah. So so when you are using any weather application on your mobile, if there is no API, right? Without API, your weather application must open weather.com website and read the details as the human does. Suppose you are checking weather details on your mobile app, right? Or some application, right? So if there is no API, weather application must open that application, whatever application. If you are using a web application or a mobile app, it must open weather.com site. It should go to the corresponding website and read the details as human does. But if your application is using APIs, right? It will send a message to weather.com and receives the result and then display it, just like this. Okay? It displays so basically this API is returning the weather details or weather information in a particular city. Here you can see in the query string, you can see the name value pairs. We have two name value pairs. Q is equal to London, UK. This is the first name value pair. And app ID is equal to some, B5227, etc. You have two. So basically, this is important to understand. This API can be used to get the details of weather details in London City. right? And this is the response. See, if you observe the response, read this. CORD means coordinates. LON means longitude, latitude. Did you hear this? Do you remember these terms, anyone? Longitude, latitude.
Geography, social studies we used to learn.
Okay. Right. So LON stands for longitude, LAT stands for latitude, right? These are the coordinates of that city, right? Maybe these are the coordinates of that London city. Okay, that's what this tells you. CORD means coordinates, and these are the weather details. Temperature maximum is 281, temperature minimum is 280, right? And pressure is 1021, humidity 85. So these are the weather details in that city. I don't know what is the measurement, what is the unit of measurement here. I'm not sure on that. But these are the weather details. Not, we are not bothered about that. But we got some response from the API. Right? Now. Yeah, real life example of an API. So I gave some description here. Different individual websites for bus ticket booking or APSRTC, KSRTC, TSRTC, Orange Travels, etc. But what if you are not using the direct travels website? And what if you are using a online travel service like Redbus or Make My Trip or Avibus, right? Which aggregates information from a number of bus operator databases. So the travel service or here Redbus or Avibus or Make My Trip, in this case, interacts with the individual travel websites API. Means when you search for cities, buses between two cities on Redbus or Make My Trip or Avibus, that application will send a request to each of the APIs with which they have partnership, and then get the response and display the response like this. Displays the result like this or displays the response like this. Clear, guys? There will be a lot of API calls involved here. It will send one API request to TSRTC, one request to this, Intercity Travels, Jingbus or Orange Travels or KSR or whatever BSR or some other travels with whatever travel they have associated partnership. It will send a request to each of those travels and get the information. Request to the APIs of those applications and get the details and display here for us. Clear, guys? So this is a real life example of an API. Okay. Or else I gave one more example. API is an interface that, like your helpful waiter, if you go to a restaurant and there will be a waiter or there will be a waiter, right? Or there will be someone to whom you can place an order, right? And that waiter, will talk to the will give that order to the chef or chef who prepares your food and gets that, right? That chef may be like he may be from Orissa or he may be from Bengal and he doesn't know the local language, right? So your waiter will act as an interface between the customer and the chefs from different regions, right? So if you compare, see, because there may be multiple chefs who are from different regions, right? So one may be a Bengali, one may be a Tamilian, or one may be a Canadian, right? So, but still you will be able to place an order through the help of a waiter who can communicate with in their languages, different languages, right? So here, your APIs or web service will act like a waiter in a restaurant. Okay, someone is asking something. Guys, are you able to follow or no? Little bit confusing, right? Or totally confusing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, how to do this API testing, right? We have multiple tools to do this API testing. If you want to do functional testing for the APIs, we can use a tool like Postman, this tool. If you want to do functional testing for an API, you can use any of these tools like Postman, right? So for functional testing, but if that means single user, okay. So I'll show you some weather API, or else let me quickly create one request for that. Let me show you how to. So this is a weather map API. to update it at the moment. So observe here. What I will do is Postman demo. So what I will do is I will create one. Here I will create one request, add request, and get that API. And who will give this API? Your DevOps team will provide the API, or your functional testing team or your developers will have developers who developed that APIs. They will give you the API endpoint URL. What is that? API endpoint URL. Just like website, we call that as a URL, right? Let's say this is the website URL, API-RTC URL. But in API, we call that as API endpoint URL. Okay. So get this API, copy this, and go to your Postman tool and simply place that request URL here. Okay. As soon as you paste it, right, Postman tool is identifying the query string or key value pairs automatically, and simply click on send. And you got the status is 200 okay, and it took 129 milliseconds. The response time of this API is 129 milliseconds. And observe here, this is the response that you got is in JSON format. Observe here by default. Okay, I did not select JSON, right? There are a lot of different, this API support all these different languages, right? XML, JSON, HTML, text, right? But by default format is JSON, because almost all the APIs use JSON format. We get the response in the JSON format only, right? By default. Clear case. And this is the response that we got. So see here, coordinates, longitude, latitude. This is nothing but, whatever data we got here, right? The same data we got here in the form of JSON. Clear. This is also JSON format. Observe here. So JSON format, how to identify that is, you'll have these curly braces. Okay. If it is XML, you'll have this angle brackets. Let me go to that. Let me go to performance system fundamentals. See here. If it is the XML response, you will see the response in angle bracket. But if you are seeing curly braces, that means the response is JSON format. Okay. Clear guys?
Yes.
Now, if you want to do functional testing for this API, right? Functional testing means, suppose you send a request you request weather details in a particular city in UK. So if you send this request, whether you are getting or response or not, right? You can simply go to Postman tool and add a collection. Initially, you will not have these collections. First, add a collection, click on plus, create new collection, give some name to the collection. You can give some name to the collection, API testing. Let's say, for instance, I give the collection name as API testing. Okay. And so to this collection, click on these three dots, add request, simply copy that URL over here. You need to know the API endpoint URL, enter that request here and click on send. That's it. Okay, what is this? Invalid API. Okay. Something is, I think there is a space here. Click on send, right? And you got the response in JSON format. And this is the response time of that API. Now it took 53 milliseconds. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. So this is about functional testing. Postman tool is used for doing functional testing. Not every API will not be this much simple. Some APIs need, like authentication and authorization. Means you should know the username and password, and there will be some bearer tokens. There will be authentication and authorization process in some APIs. Okay. So every API will not be this much simple, of course. Right. So let me see if I have some other APIs connections. Yes. I'm not sure whether this is working or not now. Let me try.
Sir, is this tool is open source?
This is a free tool. Postman tool is a free tool.
Yeah,
You
thank
can
you.
download it. So download and install Postman this. Okay. And go through some tutorials on that Postman. I'll share you some recorded sessions. Right. This is predominantly used for functional testing. Manual test engineers or automation test engineers, they use this Postman mostly for API testing. So download Postman, get started go to the first link, postman.com, and download the latest versions, Windows 64-bit, right? choose your based on your operating system. Most of you have Windows only, right? So click on Windows 64-bit and install that tool. So it is a free tool, and you can see some tutorials as well. I believe you'll have some tutorials also here. File of that version release notes, files. Do you have any tutorials? Yeah, so here you have documentation, lot of, please go through this, okay? So that you can add Postman tool also into your CV and API testing also into your CV. It don't take much time, just so you can learn this API testing, complete API testing in max 4 or 5 days. Okay, so please go through this documentation, and they give some examples, right? You can see here there are send your first request, right? So you can follow this documentation and do some API testing with the help of Postman tool. Now, when you are using Postman tool, right, we are actually doing functional testing. We are testing with a single user, only with a single user. Okay, not more than that. But if you want to do, suppose, these APIs are being used by hundreds or thousands of users, and we want to do performance testing. We want to measure the response time of the APIs when hundreds of users are using these APIs, right? We use some performance testing tool like LoadRunner or JMeter for testing the APIs as well. And how to create a API testing script with JMeter? Let's see that. So these are the steps, guys. Add a thread group, add a sampler called HTTP request sampler, enter API details. So first, before creating a script, first check in the browser. You can check in the browser first. That is a simple way to check whether you have all the data or not, and if you are getting response from that API or not. Because if you are not getting response from the browser, obviously, you will not get response even though you have a JMeter script for this. Clear, guys? So first test it in the browser, and once you are seeing this from some response, now how to do performance testing for the APIs is you can use any of these tools like performance testing tools like LoadRunner or JMeter. And let me show you quickly. It will take hardly 1 minute to create a script, API testing script. Let me show you that. Once you launch JMeter tool, add a, by default, you will have a test plan element, isn't it? Once you launch the tool, you will have a test plan element. To the test plan element, add a thread group. Add a thread group to the test plan. You can give some name to this. First thing is like we are going to use weather API. Weather API. You can give the name. And to this API, add a HTTP request sampler. Right? Now, what is the API endpoint URL? Get that API endpoint URL. You should have the API endpoint URL. And what is the API endpoint URL, guys? Copy this. Go to JMeter, keep it in the comments first. Right? Now, you should, see, this is just a comment. Okay. Now, what should you do is you should give this information. You need to develop the script, the JMeter script. For that, you need to know these details. What is the protocol? HTTP is the protocol, right? So type here HTTP. Next, what is the server name or IP address? What would be the server name or IP address? Yes, you remember I have explained resource path. What is resource path? What is a HTTP request and all? Yes or no?
Yes, fine. Yeah.
Yes.
So go to the request response cycle, right? So observe here, this is protocol, this is protocol here in this example. Server name is nothing but this one. In this example, this is the server name. In this example, this is the server name, isn't it? In this example, Amazon example, this is the server name, isn't it? And what is this called as? What is this part called as?
Resource path.
Resource path, right? So here in JMeter, that is called as path. So you should be able to differentiate what is this, what is a protocol, what protocol is, you can see like, here if it is a HTTP or HTTPS, but you need to differentiate what is the server name, what would be the port number is optional anyways. what is the resource path, what are query strings. You need to break this request into these different parts. So this is my server. This would be the server name. api.openweathermap.org. That is the server name. Okay. Port number, we don't have any port number here. Next one, the request method is a get method. So how do we know that request method? What is the request method? So you can simply, when you are hitting that API in the browser, right? You can simply open developer tools and find out that. Yes or no? Yes or no, guys? So once you send the request again by opening the developer tools. So you can see it over here, whether it is a get request or a post request. What request it is?
Get.
Right? It is a get method, right? You can see that here also. Right? Can you see it here? No, we cannot see it here. We have to check in the developer tools whether it is a get request to confirm that it is a get request or if it is a post request. Okay. So now JMeter select that get method. So by default, get is the request method by default. And what is the path for that? So this is the path, right? From here to here. That is the resource path. Or should I give from here? Okay. I think we should give from here. Let's see. This is fine. This should be correct. So, right? If not, we'll check. Let's complete the script and we can check whether it is correct or not. Okay. And what are the name value pairs? Observe here. Name value. Right? This is name. Let me use spotlight. So this is name and this is value. So, and what are the name value pairs for this API? So here it is. This is name. Q is equal to, this is name, and the London UK, this is the value, isn't it? So what you do is copy this. Can we do like this? Add from clipboard? Yes. I copied that and used this add from clipboard. Now name and value pairs are automatically populated. Yes or no? Right? And in the same way, select the second name value pair and select this one, add from clipboard. Right? That's it. Now your WeatherMap API script is ready. Save this with some name. Okay, already have Weather API. Okay. Save it. If you want to save it, save it. Otherwise, you can run it without saving also. Now I want to see the response time, or I want to see the response, right? Response of the request. So what is the listener that I should add if I want to see the response?
View results.
Yeah, view
View
results.
results.
Right. And I want to measure the response time also. For that, I add one listener for. Yes. You can add either summary report or aggregate report, anything is fine. Right? Save it once. And observe here in options, make sure that this is selected, save automatically before run, so that you did not click save explicitly. Now simply click on send that, replay the script. Now see here, this is the request. See, this is the request that is sent to the API. Observe here. If you click on request, so this is the request that is sent to the server. This is exactly same as, right? This is exactly same as. Oh, hold on. So I will use straight from compare.com. So whatever request is sent in JMeter script, I am pasting it here. And what is the API endpoint URL? This is the API endpoint URL, isn't it? I will copy it here, right? Click on that, right? So the same request was sent, right, from JMeter as well. Yes or no? It is saying that two tests are identical, right? So for that you should know, you should understand this request. You should understand this, what is server name, what is resource path, what is meant by query string, what is the query string in this. You should have an understanding of that, right? And that is the reason why I explained this in performance testing fundamentals. Okay. Yes or no, guys? Let's say we're
Yes.
gonna explain here what is protocol, what is server name, what is resource path, what is meant by query string, and all these concepts. Right now, so now what you do? So now, so we have sent a single request. If you want to do
Hey, Pawan,
performance testing, yes.
sorry to interrupt. One query. Pawan, that
One
HTTP
second,
request. Yeah.
one second. Let me complete this response data. See here. So this is the response that we got from the server, right? And now you can add a response assertion for this request. Add assertion, response assertion, just to make sure that you are getting proper response or not. If you get some proper response from the server, it should contain all these values: coordinate, latitude, longitude, weather, temperature, humidity, and all this, right? So choose something. Choose any of the any string as a response assertion, right? But don't select values because values will be changing, isn't it? So select these kind of strings: temperature or pressure or humidity, right? Select these kind of strings. Don't select values, isn't it? Because values will be changing, isn't it? So let's say I selected humidity. Now replay the script, right? Now you got a response and the response assertion passed, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
What is the response time? It took 134 milliseconds. This API took 134 milliseconds as the average. That is the average response time. Now, if you want to do performance testing for this API, if you want to do with 100 users, let's say for example, right? If you want to test with 100 users and all those 100 users should ramp up in 100 seconds, right? Give the values, give the thread property as number of threads as 100, ramp up period as 100, and replay the script. And I want to insert something time. I don't want to hit continuously. Then you can add a timer. Add a timer called constant timer, and you can enter some value here so that between each request some ping time will be applied. If you use the constant timer and use some ping time value between, see here, we are sending request without any delay. Okay. Yes or no? We are sending the request without any delay. All the users are sending request without any delay. If you want to introduce some delay, constant timer should be used for API testing. When you are using API testing, you can use constant timer. And let's see the response times now. 114. Previously, it was 112 or something. What is the response time before with one user? I think it's 112. Anyone remember that?
134. Huh?
134.
Yeah.
134.
Yes.
134. Okay. Why it is less here when we have user load is we should add a config element called cookie manager, cache manager, and we need to clear cache each
Clear
iteration.
cache.
Each iteration. Right? Now let me stop the script. Let the think time be 300 milliseconds, right? Or else let me disable the think time for time being, because I want to show you the difference. With one user, what is the response time? Let's say with one user, what is the response time? And with 100 user load, let's see what is the response time of the API. Okay, first I am running with one user. Let me clear all this. I'm playing with one user. What is the response time? 120 seconds, 120 milliseconds. Sorry, this is 120 milliseconds. Now let's test the same API with 100 users. Clear this previous results. So this. Okay. And if you want to see how the users are ramping up, add a active threads over time listener. Right? Now let's see the response times. How are the response times now? Here you can see response times increased, right? Previously with one user, it is 120, isn't it? Now it went up to 197. See here. Yes or no?
Yes.
Maximum response time is 197, isn't it?
Correct.
Average is also 125, 126, 127. Obviously, it will be more when one single user is hitting, multiple users are hitting. Obviously, there will be some difference.
Right.
Clear, guys? So this is how we are doing API testing, response time of the APIs. Or not only response times, we are checking whether we got proper response or not by adding response assertion. Right? We are checking the Let me go to that, API testing quickly. So we are testing data accuracy. We are testing HTTP status codes. What is the status code that we got? Where can we see that? So you go to view results tree, select each request and see the response headers, right? You can check the response codes here. You can check the response here, and we can check the response time, right? In any listener gives the response time, isn't it? So we are checking response time, we are checking status code, we check data accuracy, right? Error codes, if any API returns any error, and authorization checks. Of course, here there is no authorization concept in this example, but this is what we focus when we are doing API testing. We check whether the response is correct or not, whether we are getting a response, what is the status code, what is the response time of the API, error codes, and etc. Yeah, Suresh, you are asking something.
Yeah. Pawan,
So
two
in
questions.
that way, hey, sorry, man, sorry. So in that way, you will have any application, you will have a lot of APIs. So you'll add the each API like this, right? So you add a sampler called HTTP request sampler. Suppose you have one more API, add one more HTTP request and fill these details, and you will do API testing for all the APIs of your application. Yeah. Now I am done, Suresh. Sorry, you can go ahead now.
No problem. So Pawan, in performance testing, do we really need to have response assertions?
Yes, must and should. Otherwise, you will not know how many requests are passing, how many requests are failing without response assertion. If you don't give response assertion, so your JMeter or load runner will not throw any error, right? If it doesn't get a proper response. You remember, before adding response assertion, our user registration script used to pass every time. It used to show in green color. But once we add the response assertion, if you try to register with the same user, existing user, then the request used to fail. Yes or no?
Correct. But only thing is, if API is not working, if API doesn't work, or it will return 500 server error, right? So on the other hand, if it returns a 500 server error, the HTTP request will fail. But in response assertion, we are doing a functional testing out here, right? Do we need to do functional testing in performance part?
Now, where are we doing functional testing? So
Because
yeah,
yeah,
in Postman tool, you mean to say?
no, in JMeter, like in this, we are checking a response whether it is giving us the correct output or not. Like suppose I've created a
Okay.
user, right? I'm checking whether the user is created successfully or not. So it's kind of a functional testing that we're doing. But do we need that here?
But on load, if you want to test the API with multiple
Right.
users, then only we need this some performance testing tool like JMeter or loader. Only
No,
when you want to
yeah.
check, the performance of the API with multiple users, then only we need this. If
No.
you want to do functional testing, we need not use JMeter tool or loader tool. We can do it in tools like Postman.
No, my question is, in our performance scripts, do we need to add response assertion? No.
Must and should.
But when we add response assertion, we are doing a functional testing, right? We are
Sorry?
basically, yeah.
No.
Because we're
See,
checking whether, yeah.
See, when you are hitting an API, only one or two users are hitting the API, you may get a proper response every time. But when you are applying some load, when hundreds of users are accessing the API, that request may fail, some request may fail.
Correct.
So to confirm whether we got a response or not, proper response or not from the server, we add these response assertions.
Got it. My only thing is, like, if the response fails, right, it will either return a 500 error or something.
But will your JMeter, if it returns 500, will your JMeter automatically identify that?
Yeah, it basically puts a 500 means a red out here, right? It basically.
There also we will add a response assertion. So if you want to identify with the help of response assertion, right, we need to add this response assertion element and use this response code.
Okay.
But JMeter will not be able to identify, automatically will not be able to check if the response code is 500 and show it as an error.
Can you just check? Yeah, can we do just one sample, just one testing? Yeah. So for example, if you go to the HTTP request, right? So for weather, now just yeah. Just remove R at the end or something.
Yeah, remove some letter E here.
Huh.
I think this.
Yeah.
I'll remove this responsive version.
Yeah. Now let's
Just give one user. Okay.
sure. Yeah, put one user.
Oh, this one.
It basically
See.
gives a yeah.
Internal server error. Yeah, this is a client side error only because it is not a valid request.
So like basically I'm just saying this one, like in the such cases, so without assertion it basically fails. Out
Okay.
here.
Yeah. So suppose like this request, you are getting, you may get the response, proper response with
Right.
one user. But how do you identify? See, again, API testing also we will not be able to do it in GUI mode, isn't it? So we have to do this also in non-GUI mode only, right? How do you identify, like, what is the reason for the error when you are running in non-GUI mode, where we will not see this review results tree or some this. We cannot use the view results tree, right? So unless until you keep any response assertion, we will not see what is the error. Yes or no?
Right. Yeah.
Or else you have to open the JTL file once the test is completed, or while the test is going on, you have to open the JTL file.
Correct. Correct.
But if you keep a response assertion there and then, you will know like whether how many requests are passing and how many are failing.
Agree. Yes. Yes. Sure. Sure. Thanks for
It identified based on the response header, based on the error code, it has identified. Yes.
right.
JMeter has identified and it displaying as an error.
Right.
But you remember, like in user registration script, right? For example, in user registration script. So even though you are, you remember that a user registration script, even though the request is failing and the application is displaying an error message that username is already taken, right?
Correct.
It
That is
shows
green.
the
Yeah.
request as a successful request only. It will not
You're
show
right.
in that.
You're right.
In
You're
that cases, we require this, response.
You have to take care. Yeah. True. True. One more question, Pawan. Here, can you tell like what does this URL encode means? Like we have a checkbox for URL encode. What does that mean?
This one.
Yeah, right. That one.
Okay. So URL encode means okay, URL encoding. So if we have some special characters, let's say space or ampersand or something, there will be some URL encoding for that. Okay. So let's say URL encode. Yes.
Yeah, good space. Okay.
So space is represented as %20 in UTF-8 format. So the space is represented as %20. Or if you have a comma or something, or if you have an exclamation mark or quotes, they will be like, these are the URL encoding formats. Right? So a space in a page fragment part has to be encoded to %20. Right? And while the plus character in the path, what is the URL encoding for? We'll have some table.
Encoding this.
I'm searching for some table. Yes. So observe here. This is a URL encoding format for apostrophe. This is ASCII value. This is the URL encoding format for apostrophe. Right? And that way, for each for each character, you have some URL encoding format. And if your request is going in URL encoding format, see your JMeter you remember, like when you are recording the script, right? If there is some URL encoding, okay, let me open some previous scripts and show you that. I'll open some previous script and show that some places where you have space or a special symbol, right? Special character or a symbol, you'll get some that it will be automatically identified and recorded by JMeter.
Right. But what is the purpose of encoding it, like converting it to another form? Like the special characters?
We'll come to that.
Sure.
Just checking if there are any URL encoding done or. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, yes.
So there is a space in between. See, random departure city. Maybe sometimes there will be a space here.
Correct.
Right? There may not be a space also. Sometimes, suppose if city is New York, there will be a space here. So such characters, such text will be sent in URL encoding format. Whenever there is some space or a special character in them.
Got it. Okay.
So, and the return date, we have a slash here, right? In the date format, you will have slash in between. That's why, that will be sent in URL encoded format. Right? Departure date and return date, you have slash symbol, right? Whenever there are some special characters or spaces, that data will be sent in URL encoding format.
Got it. And what's the purpose of why do we convert it over?
Listen, I don't have an answer. Why URL encoding? Why URL encoding?
One question on that endpoint.
We need to encode URLs. 1 minute. URLs can only have certain characters. Can only have certain characters from standard 128 character ASCII set. Reserved characters that do not belong to this set must be encoded.
Got it.
This means that we need to encode these characters when passing
into the
URL.
URL. Yeah, that's clear. Yep. So it can only we can only pass from the 128 character set.
Yes. Non-ASCII characters into a format that can be transmitted over internet. For that, URL encoding is used.
Correct.
Encoding converts non-ASCII characters into a format that can be transmitted over internet.
Got it, man. Thank you.
Hey, someone else is asking some other question.
Yes, boss. Can you please open that script?
Yes.
Yeah, here we are giving the name. Why we are giving this?
This one?
Yes.
What
name
is
and
it?
value. Name and value. Why we are giving this name and value?
Okay. So this is the API, and we want to fetch the weather details of London and UK. London in UK. App ID may be the application ID of that weather application.
Yeah, but
so this is kind of form data. Suppose you want to get a weather details in Mumbai. Here you will give Mumbai IN or country code.
But sometimes see, URLs will be like this. So it will get for the whole city's URLs, like all the cities data. Endpoint URLs will be like this. Suppose 100 cities data in single request.
I don't know what is the API for that. Okay, let me try to. 1 second.
Just I am giving examples. So I see one of the endpoint URL.
Yeah. Let me check if if I pass only till here. Let me check if it returns the weather details of all the cities. Let me check that. But we need app ID, right? App ID means weather map API. This may not work actually, but let me try. Let me see what output does it give. What is the response that it gives? Another stuff. Okay. Valid API key. The app ID is required. Okay, this is not a.
In post data URL.
We can see some examples. Okay, we can. So what you do is API examples. Google search for API examples or sample APIs. Okay. Let me search for sample APIs. There should be some website where you have a lot of APIs.
Post method we will get those.
1 second. I should be having some link of some public APIs. Let's see this. Let's see if this is working. Get cities by country. Right? So let me check. This is the easiest way to check. To simply add a request. Paste that request. You can't send it. Will not get a response. So this is not working basically. It's not working. Or you can simply check the browser also. It is working or not. This is not working. Let me remove that from there. Or else let me keep a comment. We'll share some. Yes, this. Request response.in. REQRES means request response.in. Here you'll have a lot of sample APIs. I'll share this in the Zoom chat. You'll have get APIs. Different APIs with different request methods. Okay. So you see a lot of APIs are there. List users. Suppose this is one API called list users. Okay. So this will get to all the users. Right?
JMeter చేసి డేటాని చేంజ్ చేయొచ్చా సార్? మనకి రెస్పాన్స్ వస్తుంది కదా JSON ఫార్మాట్ లో రెస్పాన్స్ వచ్చింది కదా సార్. అది JMeter చేసి చేంజ్ చేయొచ్చా సార్ డేటా? అంటే మోడిఫై చేయడం, డిలీట్ చేయడం, అప్డేట్ చేయడం అలా చేయొచ్చా సార్?
Yes, if you know the APIs, right, you can do that. If you know the corresponding API for deleting or updating, yes, you can do that.
Okay.
See, I'll show you something. See, update API, for example, click on update. Right? This is an example. See here. Name, Morpheus, job, this one. Okay. Name is equal to Morpheus, job is this one. Okay. So we are updating the job here. Job of this employee. Let's say, for example, there is some user with this name. We are updating the job of that employee. So how to get that is, so this should be sent as name value pair now. This is your API endpoint URL. Right? To copy this. API slash. Go to copy this for you. Go to copy this one. Okay. I'm able to copy this like this. Okay, let me type it.
For this kind of URLs, what we will give that name and what we will give the name and value for this type of URLs?
I will show that actually. So what is this API? This is update request. Okay, update API. Okay, or else I'll name it as update API so that it will be more clear. What is the API? API slash user slash 2. Okay, okay. If you click here, you'll get that. Okay, you can copy from here. Right, this is the API endpoint URL. Give it over here. Right, so protocol is HTTPS here, and this is your server name. Right, this is your server name, and this is the resource path. First we will get the we'll get what is the. Hold on, let me send this request once. I will disable the rest of things. I will run only this API. So this is list users. List users also is same. List API users page is equal to 2. What is this? Okay. without sending the key value pairs, let me replay this. What is the response for this? It is getting all the that username. Okay, see here. So what is this API? User slow, second user. I want to, so this basically this fetches the details of second user or the user with ID is 2, whose ID is 2. That is what I understood from here. ID 2, and what is that user email? This is the user email, first name, last name, etc. Right now, this is a normal API to get the user details. Now, if you want to update some field for that API, right? So this is how we have to send it. What is this? In name is equal to Morpheus, job is equal to this one. What you do is copy this. If we do here add from clipboard, let me check if it works. No, it's not. Okay, okay. What you do is add name Morpheus. You can give anything for that matter. Morpheus. Are we seeing the name over here? Did we see the name here? First name Janet, last name Weaver. First name Janet, last name Weaver. Okay. Now what are we doing here? Update API changes. Let's say if you want to update the name like this. So one more value, I'll send it as job. I'll take this example. Okay, job, Geon resident. Okay, I'll do something else. I'll do something else. Okay, so okay. Now this is update API. We are sending some data to update the name to Pawan and job to this thing. Now let's replay this.
You need to make it to put a GET request.
Yes, we need to take care of that.
Change the request to put.
Correct, yes. It should be a post or put. Now you can see that data is transferred after using post data. Now name is updated. See here, right? So name is updated to Pawan, job is updated to this one, right? Now if you get the details, right? So let me do one. So now if you get the details after updating, if you get the details, let's get the details. Paste. So what is this one? Get user details, isn't it? If there is no test data, or if there is no request body, that becomes a get request, isn't it? This is a get request. That's what we observed, right? In the API without test data one. Right? Now let's see the get user details. First name, yeah, this one updating, right? Did not get updated. It's not updated. Still the name is okay. First name unavailable. First name. I think I have to view first underscore name. Let me try that here.
Pawan, do you want to change the ID 303?
I want to change the first name.
Okay.
And after with this API, I want to see that the name is updated. I'm not sure whether the name can be updated or not, but is it showing any other details? Job, it is job also, it is not showing, right? Why is it not showing those details?
No, I think the post request that you done, it has added an entry to that thing.
I think
Correct.
update methods.
Okay.
Update method.
We are using
Update or patch. Update or patch.
Right.
Post also can be used, right? Let me try.
Use put.
You can use put also. Yes. Put or use put.
Okay. True.
Do one thing. I'll copy this and put it in the first place once. Means before updating. Next it. Hey. Police it. So before updating, I am getting the user details first. And then I'm using the update API. And then again, I'm getting the details. Now let's see. Let's see this one first. What is the first name is Janet. Next, update API. First name Pawan. Next, what is the result of this? Oh, I'm getting the response for this. Not showing anything. Why is it not showing anything? Did I miss something here? Over here? Why am I not putting response for this? The request sent. This request is not going at all. How come? Is it HTTPS only? Get request, is it a HTTPS? HTTPS. Yes, you remember anyone? Is it HTTPS? It's a HTTPS only.
Yeah.
HTTPS only. Well, this request is not working at all. This has some response. Update API has some response, but this is not referring any response. Okay. I'm not sure what I'm missing here. Maybe I'm missing something. You know, I'm doing some mistake over here. Response. Okay, I'm not sure what I'm missing here. Here it is working fine without any issue. Next time it's not working. The same request is failing. I don't know. I'm not
For
sure.
updating, the method is patch.
Okay, let me use patch. Still, no, see, even though it is not updated, right, it should get the user details here, right? Whether this works or not, doesn't matter, but this should work, right? Okay, let me use patch and see. Let me clear everything. So it is not working somehow.
Or Pawan, can you keep a common view result tree for this thread group? Why is it not going
I'm not sure. I don't know why this request is not working. Oh.
Can you change the name? Acha. Don't think that should be an issue.
I think that is an issue. Let's see. Oh, actually, this name doesn't matter at all. This name doesn't have any significance.
Correct.
This is just for our understanding only.
Right. And
Okay, I'll see it later. Okay, so the request response. Let's go there. So if you want to try some APIs, right? So you can give it a try here. So list users means it will get list all the users. Single user means it will get that user, only that user details, right? What is list user? Okay, age is equal to 2. Single user means it will fetch the user whose ID is 2. Okay, and list resource, single resource not found. Create API users. It creates one resource here. It creates some record name job, right? And update. Okay, so please follow the sequence, guys. Okay, so copy this. Okay, click on that API, copy the details, right? You can copy the endpoint URL over here, and you can pass it as part of the request body. You can pass it as a part of request body. You can go here and paste that body here also. Okay, let me do the try for that. What is that update thing? So this is the endpoint URL. This is my endpoint. Okay, this is already there here, and I'll give the request body. Yes. Can we copy from here? I think we can copy from here. Yes. Go to the body data. Yes. Okay. But again, after this cut, it is not working. And this update, we are doing an update, so it's not definitely, it won't be a get request, right? So it will be a patch or put or post. Patch is
Patch
basically
will work, sir. Patch will work, sir.
Patch will be used only if you want to update only a particular field. That's what I know. Maybe I am wrong, but patch will be used if you want to update only one particular field. That's my understanding. Let's see. No, third one is not working. Get user details too. No, we got this. Oh. Okay, we are updating it here. Get user details too. Updated it. Where are we exactly updating? Name is equal to Morpheus. Job is equal to. Hey, there is some disconnect here. So we are missing something. Maybe we should get first name and first underscore name. Hey, wait, let's pause it.